Hi everyone, my name is Vineet and I'm part of the product management team at an insurance firm. The agenda for today's session is we're going to cover what Agile is all about, what is sprint planning, what is sprint demo, etc., and what a little bit about what a user story is all about. Now, before we move to what Agile is, let's look at the traditional setup or what is known as the waterfall approach. In this approach, what used to happen is all the requirements that you had to build for a certain software, all of that had to be frozen initially. All of that had to be finalized at the start itself. Then the software went into the design phase. Then it started getting developed. Then testing. Then finally it got deployed. Now the big challenge with this entire approach, if you notice, is after so much time being spent on the software getting developed and finally being deployed, when you go to the customer says, "Look, this is not actually what I wanted." When you go to the tech team, they say, sorry, this is not a bug. It's actually a feature. The customer says, sorry, I need a change because it's not something that I asked for. You go back to the tech team, they say, sorry, can't make any changes. Scope has been signed off. And then the customer is saying, who signed this entire process off? The most critical element that has been missing in this entire process, if you notice, is that during the development of the software, there was no user feedback. And we all know if you don't take users' feedback while you're developing something, the consequences of it are not very good. Now, if you look at the if you look at the team structure, you had the sales team that you would give the requirements to the product team that would then give it to the BSG team or the business solutions group that prepare this massive documents, BRDs, FSDs that nobody ever read. Then you had the compliance team, the risk team, the operations team that would come into the picture. Finance team would ask for budgets, etc. So this entire process was extremely time consuming. It was tedious, led to a lot of frustrated users and a lot of disappointed customers. Now, how does Agile solve for this? Now, if I had to define Agile using one certain image, I would use it using this image. This is what Agile is all about to me. It's about tasks being broken into smaller aspects, everybody coming together, doing their own bit, and the products getting shipped out. So this is what Agile is all about. It's about a cross-functional team, people with different skill sets coming together in one single team, and the tasks getting broken into smaller aspects, and the simultaneous execution of the products getting shipped out. So it's basically building a software in short 2 to 3 week sprints, where the most critical element that plays is the user feedback. So you build, you measure, you go to users, ask them for feedback, tell me how this is working, does it work for you or not, learn, iterate, and the next iteration, that's why it's called an iterative way of building software. In the next iteration, you incorporate that feedback. And what are you building here? You're not building a Swiss knife, you're not building all the features. In every sprint, you're trying to build a high quality, good usable knife so that you can give to your users who can use it and actually give you feedback on it. So that is what we're building on Agile. It's sort of like that sort of like that virus inverter or the prototype that he had used to build it. Now, enough of that gyaan. Let's talk about the process. Process will be broken down into what I would call as 3 Ds. You document your stuff, you decide what you want to build after you document, and then you deliver it. Let's look at documentation. Now, in documentation, assume that you have to define what a machine is. Let's say if you had used this machine, we all remember this definition, right? Any combination of bodies so connected with relative motions, blah, blah, blah. It's a fantastic definition. It's comprehensive, it's clear. It has all the components required for a definition. But can a machine be defined in a simpler fashion? Like, for example, as a human, I would like a tool that helps me multiply my human effort so that my work becomes easier and faster. This is also a machine. Now, if you look at both definitions, this definition is what you would call as the BRDs or FSDs. This definition on the right is what is a user story. A user story is nothing but a feature defined from the perspective of the user. This talks about the user. This does not talk about the user. This talks about the benefit of that feature. This does not. This user story can be literally written in post-it note and can be understood by anybody, developer, users, everybody. So this is what a user story is all about. It's a feature what the customer or the user wants. So all the BRDs, those big documents that we used to prepare, all of that got broken down into smaller user stories or smaller features. So what's a user story actually? A user story can be as simple as an employee, I would like to log into the employee portal so that I can mark my attendance. It's a short way of describing a feature. More importantly, follows this structure: who, what, why. Who the user is the employee. What he would like to do, log into the portal. Why? So that he can mark his attendance. This is what a user story is about: who, what, and why. Now, what's an epic? So suppose you have a bunch of user stories. All of those user stories we are part of certain epic. For example, we're building a homepage. That homepage is an epic. It'll have a lot of user stories. We're building a payments page. It'll have a lot of user stories. So that's an epic number 2. What's a product backlog? Collection of the entire user stories epics are part of the product backlog. So this is exhaustive list of features, epics that the product manager wants to build, and he maintains his backlog. He decides, okay, out of all these features, right, I want to build these features only. So that's what a product backlog is all about. Now we have more about a user story. We'll be covering what is invest, acceptance criteria, definition of done, as to how you can write better user stories. That's a separate video. Now let's look at, once you have documented all your user stories, let's look at how you decide to go about building them. Now the three main methods, if you had to use for decision making of what stories had to be built. One is known as the Moscow method. So once you build all of user stories, the Moscow method tells you that classify the stories into four main buckets. What is must have? Must have is nothing but something that's essential, something like water that you can't live without. It needs to be part of your MVP. It needs to go live when you're building the software. Should have is something like fruit juices. It's important, it's good nutrition, etc. But can I live without it? Surely, I can live without it. Could have is like a coffee or tea. It's good to have. It's not essential for sure. So this is something that you can deprioritize, you can take it up later. Won't have is something that obviously doesn't add any value. So that's won't have. Now the second method is known as the impact versus urgency. So for example, let's say if you're building a site where you want to capture customers' interest for an insurance product, classify whether it's high impact, high urgency. Something like capturing mobile number will have high impact as well as high urgency. So include that as part of your MVP or as part of your initial release. Something that has high impact but low urgency. For example, image recognition on documents has high impact on your risk factors, etc. and all that, but maybe low urgency. So that you might take it in the next phase. A feature that has high urgency, like one customer wants that customized offer. Okay? That obviously has low impact. So that's something you will revisit. You'll take it up much later. This is maybe your third phase. And something that has low impact and low urgency, maybe fourth phase or possibly you'll not take it up as well. So impact versus the urgency of a specific feature. The third method is known as the RICE score. The RICE score simply looks at, if you're launching a feature, what is the reach of that feature? What's the impact once it reaches those users? What's the impact will get created? And what is your confidence level of that impact? And to build all of this feature, what is the effort that it takes? Now, obviously, if the reach and impact and the confidence is high and the effort is low, you'll obviously prioritize that because that'll give the best gains in the shortest amount of time. So that's the RICE score. But now, once you've documented, you have then decided what to build. This is how you deliver the software. So this is how a 2-week sprint looks like. It starts, let's say, on the 1st of Jan. Now, on the 1st of Jan, you'll do your sprint planning. This is where the product manager from his product backlog, he'll decide, okay, these are the features I want to build on the start of the sprint planning, during the sprint planning. It's done along with the tech team, along with the business users, that, okay, these features are important. This is how we'll plan for the sprint. This is what you'll build in the sprint, during the 2-week sprint. Then you have something known as a daily scrum, where it's a 15-minute stand-up. Everybody comes in, talks about the issues that we're facing yesterday, what they're planning to do today, any impediments that they're facing, etc. It's a quick check. It's a quick huddle. Then the third event is known as a sprint demo. So whatever you've decided in the sprint planning to be built, you will demo that software to the users. It's actually a working software that will demo to your users. It could be a login page, it could be a payments page, but it shows small pieces of software that you're building and you're getting feedback on. So this is a sprint demo. This is when the sprint ends. The fourth most important event is known as the sprint retrospective. It's basically, the team comes back, says, okay, what they could have done better during the entire software building process. So it's all about looking back and, improving upon this whole software building process of the sprint. So in a nutshell, how it happens is you have a product backlog that's maintained by the product manager. He has a list of features, user stories that takes into the sprint backlog during the sprint planning. During the sprint demo, once the software gets built, during the sprint demo, he takes the feedback from the users and then it gets to ship to production. So this is how the software gets built. So basically in 2 weeks of the sprint, you have a potentially shippable product. It's not necessary you might go live with it, but it's potentially shippable to the customers. Now, the advantage of this method is that, for the next sprint, the product manager can decide to take these features or take the next set of features or possibly decide not to take them at all. The flexibility that it provides in building a software and the fact that you have a potentially shippable product along with user feedback is what agile is all about. Is what the whole software building process under agile is all about. So if you have any questions, feedback, please post in the comment section. We'll be happy to address them. Thank you.